Hey everyone, my name is Tyson, and I'm 8 years old. People always ask my parents, what's different about this child? The truth is, my story didn't begin when I was 8. It began when I was only 2 years old. One afternoon, my dad was talking to my uncle on the phone. After finishing the call, he put the phone on the table and walked it to the kitchen. A few minutes later, little Tyson, only 2 years old, picked up the phone. Everyone smiled. They thought I was just pretending to play. But then, I slowly started pressing the numbers. One after another, after another. Nobody paid attention until suddenly my uncle's phone started ringing. The whole room went silent. My dad quickly picked up the phone, looked at the screen, then looked at me. His face completely changed. He asked, "Tyson, who taught you this?" I simply smiled because I didn't know I had done something unusual. My uncle laughed at first, but after hearing what happened, he became completely silent. He said, "That's impossible. He's only 2 years old." The truth was, I had watched my dad dial that number only once, and somehow, my mind remembered every single digit. That wasn't the only strange thing. As I grew older, I could remember almost everything I saw. Tiny details, faces, numbers, patterns, things other people completely missed. Nobody knew that this unusual gift would one day save my family and completely change our future. This is our story. Before we begin, if you enjoy emotional family success stories, please like this video, share it with your family and friends, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Your support inspires us to create more powerful stories every day. Now, let's begin. I grew up in a small town called Bozeman, Montana. To everyone else, I looked like an ordinary little boy, but my parents had already realized there was something very unusual about me. I never forgot faces. I never forgot numbers. I never forgot places. Even at school, teachers started noticing that I could remember lessons after hearing them only once. Some people called it a gift. Others thought it was strange. None of us knew that this gift would one day become the reason our family's life changed forever. A few weeks later, my teacher wrote 30 random numbers on the board. She smiled and said, "Nobody can remember all of these." The entire class tried. Everyone forgot. When it was my turn, I quietly repeated every single number in the exact same order. The classroom became silent. Even my teacher couldn't believe it. One afternoon, my mom lost her wallet inside a crowded supermarket. Everyone searched for almost an hour. Then I quietly said, "Mom, you left it beside the blue shopping basket near the milk section." She looked confused. We walked there. The wallet was exactly where I remembered seeing it, standing near the cashier. I whispered, "Dad, that man was here 3 months ago." Dad laughed. "How do you know?" I replied, "He's wearing the same watch. He has the same scar on his left hand." Dad looked carefully. Everything I said was true. Even though I had a special memory, our family was still very poor. Dad worked all day. Mom cleaned houses. Sometimes, we barely had enough money for food. Watching my parents struggle became the biggest reason I wanted to change our future. One rainy afternoon, Dad took me to an old bookstore. There were thousands of books. I opened one book, read a few pages, closed it, then repeated almost every sentence. The owner stared at me in complete shock. He quietly asked my father, "Has this boy ever been tested?" Dad simply smiled. A local professor heard about me. He invited me to his university. He showed me hundreds of complicated patterns, pictures, and long sequences of numbers. After only one look, I remembered almost everything. The professor stood up, shook my father's hand, and said, "Your son has an extraordinary gift." Dad looked at me with tears in his eyes. For the first time, he truly believed that our family's future was about to change. A week later, the university called my parents. They wanted to sponsor my education. My mom couldn't stop crying. Dad looked at me and said, "This is only the beginning." For the first time, hope entered our home. School became harder every year. Everyone expected me to be perfect, but I wasn't. I still made mistakes. I still failed sometimes. That's when Dad reminded me, a gift means nothing without hard work. Those words stayed with me forever. I started carrying a small notebook everywhere. Whenever I noticed something unusual, I wrote it down. People laughed. They called me the little detective. I ignored them. One day, that notebook became my greatest weapon. Dad finally got a job in a small manufacturing factory. One Saturday, he took me with him. While everyone worked normally, I quietly watched every machine. After a few minutes, something caught my attention. One machine wasn't moving correctly. Nobody else noticed. I walked toward Dad. I whispered, "That machine is going to break." Dad smiled. He thought I was guessing. But only a few minutes later, the machine suddenly stopped. The manager looked shocked. If it had continued running, the company would have lost thousands of dollars. Everyone stared at me. The factory owner invited Dad into his office. He said, "Your son sees things that experienced workers completely miss." He offered Dad a better position. For the first time in years, we didn't have to worry about paying bills. Mom smiled again. Soon, more businesses heard about me. They wanted me to visit their factories. Some asked me to inspect products. Others wanted me to solve problems. People no longer called me the strange boy. Now they called me the boy who never misses anything. That night, I stood outside our small house, looking at the stars. Dad walked beside me. He asked, "Tyson, what's your dream?" I smiled, then quietly replied, "One day, I won't just help one factory. I'll build something that changes thousands of lives." Dad placed his hand on my shoulder. He smiled proudly. Neither of us knew that the biggest chapter of our journey hadn't even begun yet. Years passed. I graduated with honors. Companies offered me high-paying jobs. But I remembered Dad's words, "Don't just work for someone else's dream." That night, I made the biggest decision of my life. I would build my own company. When I announced my plan, relatives laughed once more. One cousin said, "You're dreaming too big." Another said, "You'll lose everything." Dad looked at them, then smiled at me. "Go build your future, son." My company started inside one tiny rented room. One old desk, one laptop, 3 employees. That was all we had. But every single day, we worked harder than anyone else. One of America's biggest manufacturing companies contacted us. They wanted my team to inspect their production system. We found dozens of hidden problems, saving them millions of dollars. That contract changed everything. Within 5 years, our company had offices across America. Hundreds of engineers, designers, and specialists worked with us. The little boy everyone called strange was now leading one of the fastest growing companies in the country. First thing I bought wasn't a sports car. It wasn't a private jet. I bought my parents their dream home. Mom cried the moment she saw it. Dad quietly hugged me. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. One afternoon, I returned to my old elementary school. The same teacher who once asked me to remember 30 numbers was still teaching. She smiled proudly, then told her students, "Dreams don't have an age." While leaving the school, a little boy stopped me. He looked nervous. He said, "People laugh at me because I'm different." I smiled, knelt beside him, and said, "Being different is exactly what makes you special." His smile reminded me of myself. Today, whenever people ask me, "How did you become successful?" I never talk about money. I never talk about awards. I simply remember a 2-year-old boy who watched his father dial a phone number only once and somehow never forgot it. That gift opened doors, but it was hard work. My parents' sacrifices and my grandfather's belief, that built my future. The people who once called me the strange boy now call me the man who changed lives. And I learned one lesson I'll never forget. Your greatest difference can become your greatest strength if you never stop believing in yourself.